Hello, everyone. I'm Ellen Santier, and this is Celtic Noir. And I'm really sorry about that, but I am. So much going on, and actually quite a lot going on in the garden, being spring. But here I am, and I have a story for you. And today's story is going to be The Physicians of Myddfai. It's a Welsh tale, it's a Welsh mermaid tale. So I hope you're going to enjoy it. As you know, mermaid tales are a little strange, and they're about love, and they're about how to love, and the difference perhaps between love for humans and love for other world. So here we go. The Physicians of Myddfai. And I have to thank Alan Dix for this. It's not my story, it's his. He's collected it and put it together, and I really like it. So let's see what we can do. She's just getting to the right size so she can see it. War raged over the land of Wales for many centuries before the English finally gained control of it. As with all wars, there were heroes and villains, victims and those left mourning. And one of those mourning was a widow in Carmarthenshire. Her loss was especially cruel, really, for she could already feel the movements in her baby within her. And when the news of her husband's death came, their first child, he would never see. However, her sorrow for the dead could not hold her forever, as she had to look after the living. Her son was born as the first flowers broke through the mountain snows, and his cries broke the frosty spring air. It was as if he could already tell the joy and pain that his life would bring. The widow worked hard and prospered, and her son grew into a strong, generous, handsome man. All that she felt she needed was to see him married, so that there would be grandchildren to continue her lost husband's name. However, as the years passed, he found no woman to whom he could give his heart, and, like the farmer's widow, his mother, he would give his heart once and once only in his life. It was another spring morning, and the farmer was out watching his flocks on the shores of the Llanffanifach, high up on the slopes of the Black Mountain. As the first rays of sunlight hit the shimmering waters, there was a strange rippling on the surface of the lake, and then he saw, sitting on a small rock not far from the shore, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. The farmer was to give his heart just the once and for life, and at that moment he gave it. He was no practiced lover and was clumsy with his words, although true with his heart. All he could think of was to share the barley bread that his mother had given him for his food during the day. But, with a smile, she refused. "Hard baked is thy bread. It is not easy to catch me," she said. With that, there came a gentle breeze and on the waters of the lake they rippled, and the sun glinted, and for a moment he was blinded by the glinting. And then he looked again, and there was no rock, no maiden. It felt unlike anything he had ever felt before, and not knowing whether to laugh or cry, he made his way home and told his mother what had passed. He talked long into the night, and in the morning he set out again, but this time with unbaked bread. For, as she was a woman of the waters, they'd thought, well, perhaps things baked in fire were not to her liking. He arrived before the first rays of sun had broken, and watched as the purple gave place to the blue, and the blue reflected in the still waters of the Lillifan. No ripple broke its surface, and no sound was heard save far away birdsong and the bleating of his sheep. As noon came, he was sorely tempted to begin his repast, for although lovelorn, he still had a healthy appetite. There was a sudden call, and a swan came flying over the lake, and as it passed him, the corner of one wing just touched the waters, casting ripples across its surface. His eyes followed the swan as it flew on its way, and as he looked back at the lake, there she sat on the rock, within the moving waters. His heart filled within him, and he again offered her a share of his bread, but again, with a smile and a shake of her head, she refused. Unbaked is that bread. I will have none of thee. Loath to lose her again, he started to go to her, but as he stepped in the water, there was a splash as his foot slipped on a stone. He looked down at his feet, steadied himself, and as his eyes followed the ripples out across the surface, he found that the rock was gone. No rock and no maiden. He returned home distraught. Her final words seemed clear, and her smiles were perhaps simply mockery. That a simple farmer should dare to love one of the fair folk. However, his mother knew more of women's ways than he, and advised him. If she came a second time, she may yet come a third. Here, take some part-baked bread, and be away with you to watch again. This time, he didn't wait for morning. He climbed to Llinifan before ever the first shades of dawn were glowing in the east. Slow, slow was the rising of the sun that frosty morning. Grey night burnt into the vivid red as the first light broke. And as the sun rose in a clear blue spring morning, no ripple broke the surface of the silent lake. Long and long he waited, as morning gave to noon. The day cooled, as the sun dropped, and the western sky and the last glimmers of light shone on the surface of the lake and were gone. One by one the stars appeared, and they mirrored in the lake as they shone in the heavens. Cold as the night was, all he could feel was his despair inside. At last he looked out over the lake, and with a sigh threw the bread out towards its centre. I have no gold or silver or riches to offer thee, just bread grown by my own hands from the rich earth. It is all I have to offer it save for myself, which is yours forever. And he turned to go, and as he turned, the light and the loaf hit the water, and with that the moon arose over the mountain tops and laid a cold light over the broken waters. One last time he looked back, and as he started on his way, and there, standing on the lakeside, was the lady of Llinifan, laughing gaily. Truly I will have you for your offer as much as any man true, for you offer as much as any true man may. But beware, if you strike me 3 causeless blows, no matter how gentle, I will return to the lake and never more be with you. Now it's hard to know how the fairy love and how they love us mortals, for they live long, and we may be but a passing fancy to them. But whatever the lady felt for the farmer, she was all the world to him. He could not imagine raising a hand to her, no matter how provoked, so it seemed easy to keep his simple command. To ease life for his mother, and to let the world see his new bride, they all moved down the mountain to near Myddfai, some 6 miles from the Linafan. Spring turned to spring and then to summer, and their first child was born. As the sap quickened in the birch trees, their son gave his first cries, just as his father had done before me, and without doubt all their fathers since the beginning of things. While their baby was still tiny, the farmer's cousin had a girl child in the heat of midsummer, and the christening was to be held then. No matter how often they set out to leave for the church, there was always something his wife needed for the baby. As the time drew on, he grew impatient. "Come now, or we will be late." And ever so gently, he patted her on the back to encourage her to the door. A cloud came over the sun. Sadly, she looked at him. "You know not what I see, but if we had left a moment earlier, our baby would have died of the heat. Now the clouds have hidden the sun, and he shall be well. But beware, this was thy first causeless blow." Chastened at how easily he had done what he had sworn he would never do, the farmer and his lady went to the christening, and soon all was forgotten in his love for her and the gaiety and the swift smiles with which she gladdened his heart. Spring came again, and the lady was again heavy with child. Through the hot, dry months of May and June she laboured, and in midsummer a second son was born. While this child was yet tiny, another cousin was to be married, and the farmer and his lady were invited to the ceremony. The chill and damp of autumn had set in, so this time they left the two infants with his widowed mother. And they were timely at the wedding. And all was well until, in the middle of the ceremony, the lady of Lillifan began to softly weep. The farmer tried to quieten her, afraid she would disrupt the ceremony. Ever so gently, he tapped her forearm, and the sunlight shone through the coloured glass, casting a red glow on her arm, like blood. Sadly, she looked at him. "You know not what I see, but I cry for the sorrow they do not yet know. But beware, this was thy second causeless blow. Let there be no other." As the lady foresaw, in the depths of winter, the new bride slipped on the ice and died in her husband's arms. Double was his sorrow, for as their baby had just begun to quicken within his wife, and she was dead. However, life goes on, and the following autumn the farmer and his lady had a third son, just as the trees cast the last of their summer mantle. Some months later, in the dark time of midwinter, but before the year broke into the new life, the same cousin who married his wife and lost his wife in the previous year, also fell sick and stranded in his farm. In the late February snows, he died of a wasting sickness. It was a sad affair as the family gathered for the funeral. Barely a year before, he had wept over the coffin of his own wife, and now they gathered for his burial. The farmer looked with sadness at the face of his cousin and friend, and his widowed mother played quietly with their three young sons. Then, in the silence and grief, a bright laugh rang out, first gently, then gaily, then hysterically. And the lady laughed and shook with her laughter until tears fell from her eyes. No word would hush her, and mindful of the offence she would cause, and afraid her in her hysterical state she would hurt herself, he first remonstrated with her, and then he slapped her once, with no malice, but on her cheek. Outside the rain began to fall, and the sun through the rain cast a dismal grey light upon her face. You do not know what I see, but I laugh that his sorrow is over. This life was harsh on him, yet now he finds joy in a better place, and my laughter is tinged with sorrow. This was the third blow. I may not love quite as you do, and I may not sorrow as you do, but my sorrow in parting will not die through all the ages of the earth. For I know no death, and no end to my joys or my pain. With these words, she slipped out into the now fast-falling rain. The last of the snows melted and added themselves to the water which now ran from every hillside. Small springs became streams, and mountain streams broke into waterfalls, beautiful in their cruel strength. The farmer leapt streams and struggled through torrents, but no matter how fast he followed, he could never quite catch up with her. Past their farm he followed her, past his birthplace, up the mountain side towards Llynefan, and there, on the lake shore, where he first saw her, she was lost from sight amongst the sheets of rain which harried the troubled surface of the lake. For many hours he waded and swam in the freezing waters at the edge of the Llynefan, but no sign was there of the rock or of his lady. And at last, exhausted, he fell down at the water's edge and wept. However, his sorrow could not hold him, not forever, as he had to look after the living. His three sons grew strong and wise, and it was as if the fairy blood still flowed through their veins, for they succeeded in all they turned their hands to. It was said that had they chosen, they could have become the richest and most powerful men in all Wales. But they had other purposes and turned instead to healing. Maybe it was the fairy blood within them, and maybe their mother visited them oft-times to give them advice. For their herbs and remedies were renowned. They were the first of a long line of physicians. And the widow was glad to see her dead husband's name known for healing, although he had died in war. And the farmer was finally glad to see the kind smiles when they treated people as it reminded him of another smile, a smile he had known once, long ago. And in all Wales, everyone knows the fame of the Physicians of Myddfai. Thank you. And I'm sorry there was the pause in the middle. My screen suddenly shrank and I had to work out how to get it big again without upsetting you lot too much. And I hope I didn't. I love the story. It's similar to the mermaid, merwoman stories, the Selkie stories. I think they're all over the world. I believe that one happens even to the kitsune, the foxes of Japan, and that there a kitsune goes to marry, and that she is struck, and then she leaves. It's a thought for us all, isn't it? Be careful what you're thinking. Be careful what you're wanting. And be careful that when you raise your hand for what you think is right, maybe it isn't. That's it for this week. So I'll see you all on the other side next week.